Hello, that's 12:32. So we'll begin and hopefully anyone else to join us will be able to pick up. My name's Tamsie Thomson. I'm the CEO of the Royal Corporation of Architects Scotland, and I'm very pleased to be joined here today by Kieran Gaffney of Konishi Gaffney, architects and, among other things, recipient of RIAS Awards and Doolin shortlists, and Stephen Harding from Goodfellow Communication, who has worked with RIAS on our awards program and other communication things for the last 2.5 years, nearly. I should just say, aside from that, Stephen's previously worked on many other awards programs and advises architects on their awards submissions. So I think we're going to get some really good insights here today. I'm going to start. I can't control my slides, so I'm going to hope that Joe, through telepathy, can know the right point and will change the slides. So we'll give it a go. We're here today really to find out more about the 2024 RIAS Awards, to give you some insight, some understanding, hopefully some top tips, things to do and not to do, and also to go through some of the key timelines that you need to be aware of. Please do put any questions that occur to you in the Q&A function. This really is an opportunity for you to ask any question you have. No question is a stupid question when it comes to these things. If they're very simple and factual, Joanne will try and deal with them immediately in the Q&A. Otherwise, we'll come to questions after you've heard from myself, Kieran, and Stephen here today. So it's a broad introduction to the awards. They're open to all buildings in all sectors and all scales and all parts of Scotland. So the awards really are a fantastic opportunity for teams of all sizes to showcase work of all scales. And we see everything from big master planning schemes to very small house extensions and small projects. So really there is nothing which is excluded from that. The key dates for you to be aware of, the first of which is the 24th of November, which is this coming Friday. It's the deadline for our early bird ticket sales. That gives you an opportunity to essentially pay slightly less on your entry fee. If you go for that, all you need to do is to pay for your entry. You don't have to complete your entire submission. You still have until the 12th of January, which is the final date for that. So there is no disadvantage in signing up now before the 24th. I would just highlight the date of the 12th of January as the final deadline. We won't be issuing any extensions at all this year on that. That's because we've made it the last possible date to give you the most possible time over what I know is a really busy period with Christmas and everything else. That is because the judging, the shortlisting will be taking place in January, and obviously the team need to collate everything. Also just want to highlight that is a later date than the RIBA Awards. So if you are submitting both north and south of the border, you do have a few additional weeks for those Scottish projects. If you've been shortlisted, you will be given a day for an in-person visit, and that will be at the start of March. And then the winners will be announced at the end of May, and our annual summer reception will be held as usual in June. In terms of the eligibility, all types of architectural projects are eligible, including conservation, conversions, extensions, interior, new build, public realm, regeneration, restoration. You name it, if it is done by a chartered architect and a RIAS and RIBA member, it is eligible. The entries to the awards can be submitted by anyone, the architect, the client, or the user. However, all projects do require client approval and must meet the entry criteria. So submitted projects should be located in Scotland. The scheme must be completed between October the 20th and January 2023. And that's been a shift in the dates change from previous years that happened last year. And the idea is that buildings are fully occupied by the time the jury see them. They're seeing those buildings in use. You must have a chartered architect as the principal of the practice, lead designer, or project manager. You have to have a minimum of 20% of qualifying staff within the submitting practice as RIAS members or RIBA, and a minimum of 20% of qualifying staff as RIBA members, with some overseas equivalents for entrance out with Scotland. Just really want to highlight the fact the scheme must be occupied by January 2023. So that's the year before the awards closing date. We are aware that there are some times that you end up with a partially occupied scheme, whether that's a commercial scheme or a wider housing project, or a building where there is a small park where something is running to a slightly different timeline. In those situations, do email awards@rias.org.uk, or alternatively, feel free to ask the question now. There is some flexibility on it, but it is about the substantial part of the building being occupied. So the building needs to be substantially occupied. Also just want to highlight the buildings that have been unsuccessful in previous years, as long as they still fulfill the criteria, can be resubmitted one additional time, and those can be considered for both RIAS and RIBA national awards, and that brings RIAS awards in line with the RIBA rules. Obviously, you still need to meet the same criteria that we've discussed. As part of our overall awards process, as well as the RIAS Awards, we run them in tandem with the RIBA Awards. So a submission to the RIAS Awards entitles you to entrance to both the RIAS Special Awards, so that it's an automatic consideration. Also to the RIAS Andrew Doolan Best Building in Scotland Awards, but also to the RIBA Awards, including the RIBA National Award, the RIBA Client of the Year Award, the RIBA House of the Year, Stephen Lawrence Prize, and the Neve Brown Award for Housing, and then ultimately the RIBA Sterling Prize. So just a reminder that if your building is in Scotland, your entrance into all of those awards is, first step is applying for your RIAS Awards. So winners of the RIAS Awards become ultimately the long list for the Andrew Doolan Best Buildings in Scotland, but also for the special projects, special awards for any given year. You will, once you have paid your ticket and you are able to log in, you will be able to select if you wish to be considered for these special awards. But I would just confirm, if the judges think that your building is eligible and suitable and they would like to consider it, they will do so and you will be notified. So if you submit your award and then you realize that you should have ticked a box, please don't worry about that. They will still consider you. And also, if any additional awards, special awards occur in the time between you submitting and the judging. The first of these is the RIAS Lawrence McIntosh Award for Architectural Interiors. This is now in its second year. This award is there to really identify and reward architectural interior design excellence. It aims to celebrate designs that shape buildings, that improve the ways people live, work, and play, and considers things from homes, hotels, offices, healthcare, educational facilities, to anything that people use in sort of, I suppose, a regular and routine way. It recognises architectural projects that have focus on the interior layout of the building and the importance that design excellence has in enhancing a user experience of that building. So very much not just on the aesthetics, but very much on the use of the building and the importance of design in that user experience. The second special award that we have is the RIAS Equitone Project Architect of the Year Award. This is a new award for us this year, and we're very pleased to be working with Equitone, who are supporting this award. And it is specifically for the project architect. So this is something that RIBA have run for a couple of years, and we felt was really important to bring here and to recognise the contribution of the project architect in delivering an award-winning project and building. So the member will be judged on their leadership and their excellence, their contribution to the award-winning project. And it may be one where we do obviously ultimately ask for additional information to help us assess that. And as I've said, that is a new award for us this year. So really happy to be able to recognise those individual contributions. Speaking of which, the next special award is the Survey Association Scotland Client of the Year Award. This recognises a client who has gone above and beyond in the trust, support of their architect and their ambition for the project. So it really highlights the important role that a client has in allowing architects to deliver these exceptional buildings, as well as articulating the skills in the client in around managing the brief and leading that project from its very inception to the final completion. And the project you can see there is the St Andrews Laidlaw Music Centre, which won the 2023 Client of the Year. Very, very worthy client, very worthy building. The next one is the RIAS Scottish Forestry Comfor Timber Award. Scottish Forestry and Comfor have come together to sponsor an award that encourages the innovative and creative use of timber in new buildings in Scotland. The award really seeks to stimulate a greater appreciation of homegrown timber and its potential for use in construction. The building that you can see here is a house by Dorcas Architects on Skye, entirely made out of timber. And I think I'm right in saying that Kieran is a previous recipient of this award. So really looking for excellence in how timber's been used, but really, I suppose, showcasing it as a material as well. So we're really pleased to be partnering with Comfor and Scottish Forestry again on this. So how do you enter these awards? Well, first you purchase your ticket from our main awards website, and a reminder that the early bird ticket prices end this Friday. Once you buy your ticket, you'll receive a link to an Airtable form where you can fill it in. We would recommend filling some of that complex information first, maybe on a Word document, because unfortunately you cannot save the process on the form. And we all know how annoying it is when you get so far, you have to stop and then you lose everything you've done. So where things like project descriptions, would definitely recommend doing them in a Word document or similar, and then effectively cutting and pasting them into those form. Unfortunately, that's just a feature of the Airtable. The form, as I've said, will also allow you to select which special categories you'd like to enter, and it offers you some additional space for any other supporting information you'd like to include. But again, as I've said, if you don't select a special category award, but the judges think that you're suitable for it, we will come back to you for that information. There'll be an opportunity there. So finally, for me, what are the judges looking for? Well, I should say that I've been involved in RIAS Awards, RIBA Awards, Civic Trust Awards, AJ Awards, NLA Awards, and probably some others as well that I've forgotten. And I think basically with nuances, all the judges are looking for very similar things. They're looking for buildings which inspire and delight. They're looking for buildings that really provide the best user experience for those end user client, whether that's a home or whether that's a hospital, is the best experience for that. They're looking for quality buildings that are going to last and deliver that for years to come. So really these could be broken down, I suppose, into, as we do, 4 criteria. One around architectural integrity. How does the building create a positive experience for clients, end users and passerbys? What's special about the architecture of this project? Is the design innovative? Is the craftsmanship exceptional quality? Does it overcome a particular challenge? So these are all the questions that the judges will have in their heads. Then usability and context. So what makes that building accessible and inclusive, and how does it make a positive contribution to people and place? So what does it give back? Does it facilitate use, and does it do it in an inclusive way? Delivery and execution. How does the design fulfill the brief, which is obviously critical, and how does the building provide value for money, which is obviously critically important. That is not, why is the building cheap? Because obviously there's a big difference in value for money and cost per square meter. So that's what they're really looking for. What has the client got for the input there? And then finally, but not least, is sustainability. So how has the sustainability strategy informed the design? What's the link between that? How do they work together? and how does the design tackle impacts of the future climate change? Now, there are some more detailed questions on that on the form, but that's really the overview of what they're looking for. How does it address it, and how does the design inform that strategy? So that's a good point, I think, to pass over to Kieran. So Kieran Gaffney, I'm sure many of you know of Konishi Gaffney, has won, I think, several awards, and not just RIAS, but best known to me, of course, is his sawmill at Lockerbie that was so successful in our awards program last year. And Kieran's going to share some top tips and insights from his experience with you now. Kieran.
Thanks very much, Tamsie. So yes, the RIAS asked me to share some thoughts about the awards, and I've just noted down a few things. It's been quite interesting to sort of look back on our award submissions and think about what's valuable. So I wrote a few things out of why enter any awards. So one thing is to develop the practice. I thought from an early time it was important for us to try and get out there. Kudos, staff, and clients, and not just the people who have commissioned that building, but also other clients. The other clients like knowing they've picked a good architect who's winning awards. So there's a value in that. And awards are good for news, social media, website, newsletters. The last thing, which I didn't realize when I set up in practice, is that architects commission other architects. They often recommend them for limited competitions. We've been appointed on projects, including ones that have won awards, by other architects. So I think there's always a question of why talk to architects about your own work when in a way they're the competition, but I don't think that is actually how it is. Architects commission other architects. And so why the RIAS Awards? Well, I think the RIAS Awards are the most difficult to win. I've won twice. I've been shortlisted 3 times. I've won many more other awards, and so I think there's more kind of credibility in that. It's also national news when you win an RIAS Award, which it isn't if you win a Scottish Design Award or a local one of the chapters of the RIAS. So if you win one of the EA or the GIA or etc. And it's visited by judges. Most awards aren't, and the judges are often very good architects who it's good to meet and talk to you about buildings. So I thought I would just show you, so I set up in practice in 2009, and I immediately started submitting for RIAS Awards. This was my own house in 2011. We did a Bath Street window, which is actually in my screen. It's in the back there. It was on the front page of the Architects Journal, this project, but it didn't even get shortlisted. Trinity Extension, this was a house extension we didn't get shortlisted. But it's not, I mean, as Tamsie was saying earlier, it's not about the scale of the project. So we did a dormer window in 2015, which won an RIAS Award, and another extension we did in 2018. We submitted 3 projects, none of them were shortlisted. And so I think the trick to this is to not take it personally when you're not when you don't win or you don't get shortlisted. It's a kind of subjective thing, but also it's important to get, I think, to put yourself out there, put practice out there to say, we think we're good. We won a second time in 2012 or 2022, sorry, for the Lockerbie project, and we were shortlisted last year but didn't win for the Greyfriars project. So one thing I also wanted to say was that shortlisting, even though we didn't win last year, shortlisting is a good thing. It's you get out there. The RIAS publishes stuff about your project. There were 13 projects shortlisted in 2023, 7 won awards, and currently 4 are shortlisted for the Doolan Prize. But being in that list of 13 is like winning. You don't actually need to win to win. I've put on a little video. Hope this works. This is 2023. Sorry. This year's, is it working? This is new for me, doing screen things. So this is what the RIAS published. They put it on their website and they list all the projects. Every project gets a picture and who it is, and then that gets put out to, that's our project, Greyfriars project, gets put out to press throughout the UK. Let's get to the end of this list. yeah. So the message is being shortlisted is winning. And then this, a similar, this is the BBC picked up when we won in 2022. This was on the national BBC website, so every project which was shortlisted was on this list, and so that makes it into the public realm in a way that it's not just architectural press. So, winning an AJ Award or one of the Scottish Design Awards, for example, or Edinburgh Architectural Association Award is not the same as winning an RIAS Award. Yes, this is the Doolan Prize. I just wanted to mention about, so previously, I think this is right, in 2015, when we won for our dormer window, every project that won an award was shortlisted for the Doolan Prize. That's now changed, and the judges shortlist down for the Doolan. So last year, I think from memory, there might have been 8 RIAS Awards, and there were 5 projects shortlisted for the Doolan Prize. The Doolan Prize, there's a £25,000 budget towards that project. It used to be that money was given to the winning project, and now I think the RIAS have decided that they will split that money, so they give 12,500, and the other money they spend on PR. And this is a video that was done as part of that PR budget, and they were published. It was by Jim Stevenson, a very good photographer, and I don't know if you can hear that. I can, but
Can't hear it, but we can see it.
yeah, okay. So they do a little video, which is and photographs of the project, and they interviewed our client, and they interviewed me as well. I'll be up in a second being interviewed. So it's quite hard hearing myself while I'm talking as well. I'll stop this now, I think, and the point is there's a value in the Doolan Prize shortlisting. The Doolan Prize shortlisting is really valuable. There's a cost in submitting for the RIAS Awards, but if you're shortlisted to win, there's an immediate payback. So Jim Stevenson, who we are now working with as a result of him doing this photography, he's one of the best photographers in the UK. He's widely published. He gets things in the press just by him having photographed it. So there's a value in that. It was the point. Next slide, if I can do that. Oh yeah. So as I was saying earlier about this thing about failing, so submitting and not being shortlisted, the trick is not to take it personally, and to point out that it is subjective. It is down to some judges who decide what they are interested in. Like this was the famous project which didn't win an award. It was very controversial in 2012. Zaha Hadid's building, which this is not my architecture, but the interior of that building is it's amazing, and when we won for our dormer window, this project, Stephen Hall's project at the Glasgow School of Art, didn't win. And that was very interesting to see some reactions about that. So I think that's one key message, is remember it's subjective. So don't take it personally when you don't get shortlisted. Oh yeah, and the last thing was about money, because I didn't know this. And I see Tamsie just explained all these awards and don't tell you actually win money. We won this Wood for Good award, and we won £1,000 in cash. And so 2 days after we won this, we get one of these things. They phoned up and said, where should we send a check? And this check for £1,000 arrived for winning the Wood for Good award. So in my opinion, RIAS Awards are the best awards, and everyone should submit, and you shouldn't take it personally if you don't win. That was my message. Thanks.
Thank you, Kieran. Yeah, and just to clarify, that continues to be the case with the Doolan. So we spend money on those films, and then the architects still get a cash prize of £10,000, making it, I think, we believe, still the biggest cash prize in architecture, because most of the other architectural awards don't come with any cash, I think. So thank you for that. And yes, some very beautiful buildings and some interesting decisions, and having sat around the table, both at RIAS and, as I said before, at RIBA, you you do get some interesting decisions at times, but I suppose that's part of the drama of it all. So over to you, Stephen. As I said, Stephen Harding is a comms consultant with much awards experience, both submitting on behalf and with clients, and also sat the other side of the table supporting us and in previous roles. Stephen.
Thanks, Tamsie. Yes, two of the most important elements of any successful award submission are going to be the words that you use for your project description and the images that you use to illustrate the award submission. The text is, I believe, a 500-word little statement about the project, and it really is the opportunity to tell the story of the building in interesting ways, but also in very simple terms as well. I think one of the most important things to bear in mind is that although you'll be talking about a building that you're extremely familiar with, and in most cases, the RIAS Award is probably the last award you'll be entering for it, given the 12 months occupancy and use requirement. So this is the building which you will have lived and breathed for many, many years, from conception to execution and beyond. But you must assume no prior knowledge whatsoever on the part of those people who are assessing the award submission. So you need to start at first principles and really walk people through the story of the building and what it feels like to be in that building. You need to clearly explain the context, any influences, the relationship with the client, and how that came to have bearings upon the end result. Talk about the execution. It's fine to talk about problems as well. Often the ability to overcome problems during the gestation of a building is what makes for an interesting story, an interesting building, an interesting outcome, and often sets builders apart from the competition when it comes to entering awards. But do read the criteria. The criteria are there for a reason, to enable buildings to be judged fairly against each other. It's important that you hit all the criteria as much as you possibly can, but you don't feel the need to address all criteria equally, because every building is different. Every building has its strengths, and there may be particular elements to a building that are relevant to a particular criterion that you want to emphasize. So it's fine to emphasize that. If you don't, do avoid the use of jargon, or the use of unfamiliar terms, or the use of obscure references without any explanation. Again, your entry just needs to be clear for the everyday user, because another thing to bear in mind, of course, is that not all of the people assessing a building for the purpose of the RIAS Awards are architects. There are lay assessors as part of the judging process as well. So don't assume deep architectural knowledge. And that's important to me and my team as well when we come to doing press and PR around the awards, because we have to translate award submissions into something that is interesting, relevant, compelling to journalists, and via journalists to the ordinary reader, the ordinary viewer, or the ordinary listener. When we're putting together press material for the awards, our primary source material is always the award submission. And when we're telling stories about the award-winning buildings, it's the stories that are told by you as architects entering the awards that we're simply rehearsing and putting into different words. So if you can tell a good, interesting story in a way that makes sense to somebody who's never experienced the building before and doesn't necessarily know a great deal about that architecture, then you're really going a long way to helping yourself talk about the building in a way that will make sense and will come alive to people judging the awards. With images, think very carefully about the images that you're going to use. I think you have 10 images, and the way to approach it is perhaps to think about your images almost in the way as you would a set of plans. You need to choose and curate your images in a way that really helps to support the text, that really helps to explain the building very, very clearly, that shows very clearly the context, the setting, the layout. If you can, choose images that give a sense of what it feels like to inhabit the space of the building, or to be in the setting of the building. There may be interesting details that you want to emphasize. And again, just thinking when we were dealing with Kieran's Lockerbie Sawmill project, one of the elements there that really sticks in my mind is the use of a very simple untreated timber column that spoke so much about the materiality of the building and how the building was being used to showcase timber and the business that it served. Avoid shots that don't tell a story, that aren't easy to explain. Particularly at shortlisting stage, judges will be looking at dozens of submissions and making judgments that have to be supported by the imagery. So the images really, really have to explain the building very, very simply, very, very clearly. And remember that if you're shortlisted, or you win an RIAS Award or a special award, or maybe even get shortlisted for the Doolin Award, or go all the way and win the Doolin, your photos will be published. So only choose photos that you would be happy to see on social media, in magazines, newspapers, on TV, or what have you. One final thing is, and again, it's addressed in the criteria, is the relationship with the client. And if you possibly can, get a client comment. For us, it's really, really useful in talking about the building, because it says so much about not just the client relationship, but many things about the execution and the experience of being in the building as a building user. So if you can get that perspective, that's tremendously useful as well. I think those are my main points. So Tamsie, back to you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Sorry. Just lose the shared screen. Now, really, this is an opportunity for anyone and everyone to ask any questions that they have about the process, or any kind of the do's or don'ts or opportunities that we've previously discussed. But while we're waiting for those to come in, I'm going to start with one of my own, and I'm going to go to Kieran first off, if that's okay, and just ask, in terms of, I suppose, when those judges turn up on the visits, because we haven't really talked about the shortlisting visits, when you have been shortlisted and they come round, and you will have done two for the Sawmill, for the Doolin as well, because you have a second judging trip. Is there anything about those visits themselves that you have any sort of tips or reflections on for people?
I think for the Sawmill project, I think you commented on this. I was showing the judges around. There were 5 or 6 judges, and I was kind of snagging the building with them as well. And so I was pointing out things that I didn't think were perfect, you know. And so don't do that. Is one tip. But I think those discussions are really good, because as your peers who are there, sometimes maybe you're more junior than them. There's a lot of the architects who do these or certainly lead these awards things are quite senior. They've won these awards lots of times themselves, and so it's really nice to meet them and get their point of view. So I think to be open and honest, but maybe not pointing out the bad things, is my tip for that. And enjoy it. You know, I enjoyed them.
Yeah, I think as an attendee, they're hugely enjoyable. I think taking part in these things is brilliant CPD as well for everyone involved.
Yeah, and you can see that in the judges. You can see they're actually enjoying the process, and even though it's a massive, you know, I think the judges spend 2 or 3 days at a time driving all over Scotland, so it can be hard work. But I think judges do enjoy it too.
Yeah, absolutely. Stephen, do you have you obviously led visits in the past. Have you got any thoughts on visits at all?
If you can get your client there, because they will be able to say so much more than you can about what it feels like to inhabit the building, and can also support anything you're saying about the client relationship. So yeah, if you can have the client there, that's tremendously helpful. But if you are to do that, it might be worth doing a rehearsal, doing a little walk around. As Kieran says, it's often very tempting when you're walking around a building to point out the problems. So yeah, you don't want your client doing that. But yeah, I think that's very, very useful if you can do that.
Yeah, I remember Kieran pointing out where he thought the nails were wrong in the roof at one point in the ceiling in the main space. I think that's all very good tips. I would say also speaking to your client before and understanding who is from the client, who is the right representative there, because I've been where clients have been really, really insightful, but also you don't want someone like the facilities manager telling everyone how the cupboard storage space isn't enough necessarily. So thinking about who it is and what it is that you want to say, what that message is that you're trying to get across, I think is really important. And I suppose just reflecting myself, I'd say also, I think you alluded to that, Stephen, as well, like plan the route. Because what I see a lot is people get in the door and then everyone congregates while the architect talks for a long time in the hall, or the lobby space or the vestibule, whatever that first space is, which may be the big impactful space that you want to have a conversation in where people are looking around. But actually, if that is the amazing view or there's a key space that you want people to progress into, take them into that space, I would say, and start from there, start your conversation in that space rather than necessarily when you first greet them.
Can I just add to that, Tamsie?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, again, just bear in mind that your judges will be on a very tight schedule. They'll be they needing to get from A to B very quickly. So yeah, you've got people in the building, show the building. Don't waste so much time doing a presentation. They're there to walk around and experience it, and they will get frustrated if you spend too much time simply standing in the lobby giving a presentation. Get them walking around. Yeah,
absolutely. And it does happen a lot. It can influence things. We've had a question come in, which I think perhaps you could answer, Stephen, which is, should the images submitted include any drawings or sketches?
I think if you feel you can do that and you can explain your building in 10 photos or less, then yes. However, in the section of the awards form for drawings, you will be asked for the usual things: site plan, ground floor plan, typical floor plan sections, and another drawing. There's no reason why the other drawing can't be a sketch. If there's a really great concept sketch, I think that's the place to do it. 10 images, 10 photos isn't much, so I would limit that to photography. There's no need, of course, to provide elevation drawings. The photography should do that job. So with that in mind, if you can use your drawing quota sparingly, so to give yourself space for those kind of interesting sketches, that's the way to do it.
Yeah, I would agree. Only if it conveys a sort of a concept that you think isn't going to get picked up elsewhere. And one thing I would say is we often don't see sections. Sections are actually really useful for the judges to help them understand the building, particularly if there's they're in context as well. And kind of conversely from that, it's surprising sometimes how many photographs of nice door handles and various materials joining, tiles meeting wood meeting floor or something, that you get in the packs. If you feel you can, you've got the space for that, shall we say, and you think that's a key message, absolutely. I'm not saying don't include them, but I think if you're giving up images of the key space or the front elevation or a sectional drawing, I would think about that, because those are the things that ultimately are going to help inform that decision-making process. Got two questions. One is, how long is the judge's visit usually? I can answer that one. they visit. If you've been shortlisted, you get a visit, and they are typically very short. They do vary in range. They will spend slightly less time in a very small project than they will, for example, if they have to see a university campus. But that said, the average visit is between half an hour and an hour. So they are very short periods of time for people to see buildings. So it is important to kind of maximize how you're going to use that. And I would plan it remembering that normally people arrive in a car because they're covering so many miles. So, you know, even that walk from where they're going to park the car to look at the building, they're already forming those impressions. So anything you can do to tailor that time, I think is really useful. The other question is just confirming that it's only the shortlisted entries that's visited. Yes, that's the case, but if you are shortlisted for a Doolan, you will be visited again, and those visits tend to be typically slightly longer. So they would be a minimum of an hour, even for a smaller scheme, and possibly longer, particularly for a more complicated building. But they're still relatively short in terms of making key decisions, and that's really just because of how long it takes to travel around Scotland and the amount of time that obviously we have the judges for. We have a question. I'm going to pose it to you, Kieran. I'm going to read it out. It says, as someone who's never considered entering an award previously, is it better to enter a local chapter award first to gain some experience, exposure to the process first, or go all in to try it out? Also, is one better waiting until landscape is bedded in and complete before entering, which could impact on the timescales potentially?
So, yeah, I mean, that's a question that's hard to answer. I showed some of the projects we've entered which didn't get shortlisted or win, and some of those did win other awards. My chapter is the EAA, Edinburgh Architecture Association, and so I've entered almost every one of those projects. Some of them won, some of them didn't. I think it depends on the project. If you think it's good enough, you should submit it for the RIAS Award, because, you know, if you submit it for the EAA Award and think, you know, it will diminish it. If it's good enough, it'll win both, you know. So and I think it's good practice doing RIAS one. The local chapters are easier to win because there are less projects entered, you know. So the small projects or the normal projects for the EA award gets like 8 to 10 entries, you know. It's not a huge volume. The RIAS gets bigger numbers and it's harder to win. So I think it depends on the project. In terms of the landscaping, maybe it depends on what the project's like, but I think the people who are judging you are other architects who know there's no fooling them. You know, you can, and they also, on the other way, they also understand that if a building isn't bedded in, now there might be a reason why you want the landscape to bed in, and there might be a logic for waiting a year. And I think the RIAS Awards are great because you can do that. You can, they want you to wait a year anyway, but also you can enter up to, I think, was that 3 years I read that you said earlier? So you've got time, you don't need to rush that. But I would highly recommend, this is what I was advocating, everyone should enter. If your project's good enough, it will be shortlisted, I think, and down to a tiny £30,000 dormer project.
Thank you. Stephen, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, on the landscaping, obviously it helps now that a building has to have been completed and occupied for 12 months. So it's more likely than not that landscaping will be on its way to maturity. Yeah, I'd agree with Kieran. I think if landscape is integral to the project, and given you have up to 3 years post completion to enter, then it may be worth the wait. Otherwise, no, get entering. I would also agree with Kieran entirely. Don't hold back and feel you need to have practice runs with other awards before entering the RIAS Awards. They are the best awards out there for all the reasons that Kieran gave earlier. So yeah, don't deny yourself the opportunity of winning.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's just about being hopefully honest with yourself. You know, is it potentially in that ballpark, in that bracket? And if it is, there's no reason to not submit it. And we do see entries from people who are on not their first project, but maybe their first or second project as a newly started practice. And if they're good architects, then there's no reason why they wouldn't win. So it's not that you need to sort of have done a certain amount of years or anything else. And similarly, if you have had a brilliant client and you think you've produced a brilliant building, then the last thing would be to not submit it for any reason. And would just echo what everyone said about the landscape. We've had a second question, which is, I think, sort of, I suppose, linked to the landscaping question, which is, last year the criteria was the building had to be occupied for a year. Now that's changed. Are you expecting a landslide of submissions? Just to say that hasn't changed. Buildings have to be occupied by January 2023. So when the awards close in 2024, those buildings will have been occupied for a year. Where perhaps I muddied the waters by talking about substantially occupied is, we are aware that there may be a building somewhere where there is a small part that hasn't been occupied for some very good reason, but it has been substantially occupied, as in it is in more occupation than not. So if you think of a school, maybe there's one classroom that hasn't been occupied for some reason. Maybe there's some technical, particular scientific equipment that hasn't been put in, so therefore that room hasn't been used. We wouldn't want the whole building, which is in use, to not be submitted because of that one reason that's stopping that particular room from being occupied. So it is the same rules as previously. In terms of a landslide of submissions, we don't know. We do know that obviously there were buildings that haven't been submitted for the last couple of years because of COVID delays. Things have taken slightly longer, and obviously when the award was changed last year, that meant buildings that would have normally been eligible last year will now come up and be eligible for this year. So we wait and see, excited and expectant as ever, what's going to come through, because I think for me and the team, it is a bit like Christmas Day when you open the award submissions and you get to see what buildings there are, and what buildings you're going to be able to be talking about and potentially visiting is always exciting. Stephen, just coming to you, in terms of, you mentioned the text and making sure that that's suitable for everyone, and I suppose good to use as it goes forward if you are successful into those press releases that start from the shortlisting stage. Is there anything else you could sort of say on that? Any top tips or anywhere where people could go to get more resources on how to perhaps write in a way that's easily digestible or suitable?
I think read magazines, read the architecture press, read how they describe a building, or read how some of the broadsheet correspondents describe a building. They're writing for audiences beyond architecture, particularly broadsheet writers. We're currently putting together the press material for this year's Doolan Award winner, and even now, even though it's been written, that project has been written about in many different ways and many different times, I'm still going back to the award entry and lifting material from there. So it's going to be used many different times. So it just has to be really clear and obvious about how it talks about the building to somebody who doesn't know the building, who isn't an architect, but who is interested in architecture and wants to understand the story of the building, what it's like to be there. So yeah, just keep it simple. And again, as I said before, avoid anything obscure, avoid jargon, avoid unfamiliar terms, avoid weird references. We've seen entries before that quote poetry. It's the RIAS Awards are not a poetry competition. They're a building competition. So, you don't have much space to talk about your building. So for heaven's sake, just talk about the building.
Thank you. And Kieran, as we sort of draw to an end, have you got any sort of final top tips or thoughts that you would share with people? You've learned from being successful or being unsuccessful, I suppose.
Yeah, I think I've said my tips, which are not to worry about not being shortlisted. I've worked for another architect who didn't submit for awards because he didn't like the idea that someone wouldn't like his buildings. You know, there was a sort of, and I just think it's a subjective process. And I mean, I would like to come back to the writing. I think architects are pretty poor at writing. They tend to obfuscate and talk around the subject rather than getting to the point. So I think get your mum to read it, and if she understands it, then submit it. You know, it's yeah, so simple, just explain the building, you know, and yeah, and if you win, you win, and it's not a huge price. For small practices, it's a low price submission, and it's I think it's really worth doing. It helps you to evaluate your work every year. Award seasons come round. What is good enough to enter, you know, and explain those projects.
That I think that's really wise words, and I think there are lots of buildings that can be very good buildings with very happy clients that don't perhaps make it to the Doolan, that one building of the year. But that to me, I don't think that should ever devalue great buildings that make happy clients and
Yeah, absolutely, I agree
and
with
great
that.
places. Well, we will draw it to a close there. I would also remind everyone that on, I think it's our YouTube channel, certainly you can find them from our website, are the In Detail series from the last 2 years, where you can go back and hear from the architects talk about their buildings that won both the 2023 and the 2022 awards. So you can hear Kieran talk about the sawmill in more detail, and other projects as well, which might be a useful resource just to see what won, and how they're described and how judges talked about them. There was also the first In Detail series this summer, Sarah Castle, who was one of the judges for this year, talking about her thoughts and reflections on what she saw, and what she liked and what she appreciated. And I would say that's a very good resource for people who want to understand a little bit more about the psychology of the judge and what it is that they're looking for on those visits, as well as in those initial packs. And just to remind people again, the deadline for the early bird rate is the 24th of November, so this Friday, but your entries can stay open until the 12th of January, but that is going to be a hard and fast deadline, because very quickly after that, the judges will be looking and going at them and going through the shortlisting process. And if you have any questions in the meantime, please contact myself or the team at awards@rias.org.uk, and you'll find all of those details both on the website and all our social media channels. So good luck everyone who's entering, and we really look forward to seeing all of those buildings. Thank you very much.